A mother teaches her daughter to be proud, against all odds. Welcome back and enjoy the story. Cade saw it in her daughter's eyes the moment she stepped through the door. Something had changed. Her scarf was wrinkled, her shoulders tense. The little girl who once danced through the living room now walked like she was made of glass. At dinner, she spoke softly. "Mama, can I have a different name, just for school?" Cade's heart cracked. She had spent years teaching her daughter Layla the songs of their ancestors, the prayers whispered by grandmothers who wore the same scarf with pride. And now, the world had made her child ashamed. "They laughed at my food," Layla said, her voice barely above a whisper. "At my clothes, at how I talk." Cade held back tears. She couldn't shield her from everything, but she could give her roots deep enough to hold. That night, Cade told stories, real ones, of women who held families together with thread and silence, of men who carved beauty from wood, of music that rose even in exile. They cooked together, the fragrant spices filling their modest Chicago apartment. They sang softly, the melodies carrying memories of a homeland Layla had never seen. They danced barefoot in the kitchen, letting the rhythm speak what words could not. And when Layla looked in the mirror the next day, something had shifted. "I like my name," she said, her chin lifting slightly. The journey was just beginning, but Cade knew that small spark was everything. In a world determined to make them invisible, her daughter's pride would be both shield and sword. The autumn of 1962 settled over Chicago with whispers of change. The leaves in Washington Park turned golden under a pale blue sky, but Cade barely noticed as she hurried along the cracked sidewalk, her wool coat pulled tight against the chill. 3 blocks ahead lay Monroe Elementary, where Layla was finishing her first month of 4th grade. Cade usually arrived early for pickup, finding a quiet spot beneath the elm tree where she could watch her daughter emerge with the other children. Today, she was running late after her shift at the hospital cafeteria had stretched longer than expected. Her supervisor, Mrs. Brennan, had asked her to stay and help with inventory, and though Cade's feet ached and her back screamed from standing all day, she couldn't afford to refuse. As she rounded the corner, the school came into view, a stolid brick building with high windows that reflected the afternoon sun. The final bell had already rung, and clusters of children spilled from the double doors, their laughter carried. On the breeze, parents gathered in little groups, exchanging pleasantries and weekend plans. Cade scanned the crowd for Layla's purple headscarf. She spotted her daughter standing alone by the flagpole, clutching her notebooks to her chest, eyes darting around nervously. Even from a distance, Cade could see the rigid posture, the way Layla made herself small, trying to disappear within. Plain sight. 3 girls walked past, whispering and giggling behind their hands. One pointed, not bothering to hide her mockery. Cade quickened her pace, waving to catch Layla's attention. When their eyes met, Layla's shoulders sagged with relief, but there was something else in her expression, a heaviness that no 10-year-old should carry. "Mama," Layla said when Cade reached her, the word half greeting, half plea. "I'm sorry. I'm late, Habibti," Cade replied, smoothing a hand over her daughter's scarf. "Was your day good?" Layla's eyes dropped to the ground. "It was okay." They began the walk home in silence, Layla's small hand clutched in Cade's as they navigated the bustling sidewalks. The city hummed around them, cars honking, shopkeepers calling to potential customers, radio music drifting from open windows, a world alive with possibility, yet sometimes so hostile to difference. "Mrs. Collins liked my math work," Layla finally offered, her voice brightening slightly. "She said I have a natural talent for numbers." Cade squeezed her daughter's hand. "That's wonderful. You've been working so hard." "And we started learning about ancient Egypt in history class," Layla continued. "Mrs. Collins said that Egypt is part of the Middle East, like where our family comes from. Some kids looked at me funny. What kind of funny? Cade asked carefully. Layla kicked at a pebble on the sidewalk, like I was supposed to know everything already just because my grandparents came from Syria. Tommy Miller asked if we ride camels to school back home. Cade felt the familiar mixture of anger and sadness rise in her throat. And what did you say? I said no, we take the bus just like everyone else. Layla frowned. But then Becky Peterson said, I'm not like everyone else. That I'm... She hesitated, struggling with the word, foreign. They stopped at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Across the street, a young couple walked arm in arm, laughing at some private joke. An old man fed pigeons on a bench. A businessman hurried past, briefcase swinging. America, the land Cade's parents had chosen years ago, hoping for safety and opportunity after fleeing violence in their homeland. The country where Layla was born, but sometimes made to feel like an unwelcome guest. Layla, Cade said carefully, do you know what the word heritage means? The light changed, and they crossed together. I think so, Layla replied. It's like things from the past? It's the story of who we are and where we come from, Cade explained. It's the recipes your grandmother taught me, the language we speak at home, the celebrations we honor. It's the strength in our blood. She tapped Layla's chest gently. Your heritage is a gift, Habibti. Not everyone will understand it, but that doesn't make it less precious. Layla nodded, but her eyes remained troubled. Some kids say I talk funny when I speak Arabic to you. And Jessica Freeman asked why I wear this. She touched her purple scarf self-consciously. Her mum told her it means I'm oppressed. Cade stiffened, swallowing back the sharp retort that sprang to her lips. 10 years in America, and still some. People saw her only through the lens of their own assumptions, reducing the rich tapestry of her culture to simplistic stereotypes. The hijab is my choice, Cade said firmly, just as it will be your choice when you're older. It reminds me to be kind and honest in everything I do. It connects me to God and to our community. She adjusted Layla's scarf with gentle hands. Jessica's mom doesn't understand because it's not part of her heritage. That's okay. We don't have to be the same to respect each other. They turned onto their street, lined with apartment buildings, most constructed in the early 1900s, their facades showing signs of wear. Children played hopscotch on the sidewalk, while an elderly couple sat on their stoop, watching the world go by. Mrs. Rodriguez from the second floor waved as they passed, and Cade returned the greeting with a warm smile. Their building was 5 stories of weathered brick with a fire escape zigzagging up one side. The entryway smelled perpetually of cabbage and floor polish. Cade and Layla climbed 3 flights of stairs to reach their apartment. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and a combined kitchen and living area that Cade had made as comfortable as possible, with colorful rugs and cushions reminiscent of her childhood. Home. Once inside, Layla disappeared into her room, while Cade began preparing dinner, her hands moving automatically through the familiar motions of chopping onions and washing rice. Her mind, however, remained fixed on her daughter's words and the shadows she had seen in those young eyes. Layla had been born in this country, yet sometimes Cade wondered if that would ever be enough for her to be seen as truly American. The thought made her hands falter, the knife slipping against the cutting board. "Mama, can I ask you something?" Layla appeared in the kitchen doorway, having changed out of her school clothes into a comfortable sweater and pants. "Of course, Habibti." "Can I—" Layla took a deep breath. "Can I have a different name, just for school?" The knife clattered onto the counter as Cade turned to face her daughter. "What do you mean?" "Something more American," Layla explained, eyes downcast. "Like Lisa or Laura. Then maybe the other kids won't make fun of me so much." Cade's heart cracked wide open. She had spent years teaching her daughter the songs of their ancestors, the prayers whispered by grandmothers who wore the same scarf with pride. And now the world had made her child ashamed. They laugh at my food, Layla continued, tears welling in her eyes, at my clothes, at how I talk. Even when I try to speak perfect English, they still know I'm different. Cade wiped her hands on a dish towel and knelt before her daughter, looking directly into those eyes so much like her own mother's, deep brown with flecks of amber, holding generations of joy and sorrow. Your name is Layla, she said softly but firmly. It means night beauty in Arabic. Your grandmother chose it because you were born under a sky full of stars. She took Layla's small hands in hers. Names have power, Habibti. They connect us to those who came before and those who will come after. Changing your name won't make those children see you any differently. But I just want to fit in, Layla whispered. I just want to be normal. Cade held back tears. She couldn't shield her from everything, but she could give her roots deep, enough to hold. Normal is what you make it, she said, rising to her feet. Come, help me finish dinner and I'll tell you a story. That night, as the apartment filled with the aromas of cumin and simmering stew, Cade told stories, real ones, of women who held families together with thread and silence, of men who carved beauty from wood, of music that rose even in exile, of her own parents who had left everything familiar behind to build a new life in a strange land, carrying nothing but memories and hope. They cooked together, Layla carefully folding the grape leaves around spiced rice, just as her grandmother had once shown Cade. They sang softly, ancient lullabies that had soothed generations of children to sleep. They danced barefoot in the kitchen, letting the rhythms speak what words could not. Later, as Cade tucked Layla into bed, she brushed the dark curls from her daughter's forehead. Being different isn't easy, she admitted, but it gives you a special kind of sight. You can see the world from more than one perspective. That's a gift, Layla. Never forget that. Layla nodded sleepily, her eyelids growing heavy. Tell me again about the stars on the night I was born. Cade smiled, settling onto the edge of the bed. The sky was clear and vast, with more stars than I could count. Your father and I stood by the hospital window, and he said you were our brightest star of all. And when Layla looked in the mirror the next day, something had shifted. I like my name, she said, her chin lifting slightly, as she adjusted her purple scarf. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing, the days grew shorter as October deepened, leaves crunched beneath Layla's feet as she walked to school each morning alongside her mother, their breath forming small clouds in the increasingly chilly air. Though the temperature dropped, something in Layla had begun to warm, a tiny flame of pride kindled by her mother's stories and unwavering belief. Stand tall, Cade reminded her each morning at the school gates, gently straightening Layla's scarf. Remember who you are. In the classroom, Layla still felt the stares and heard the whispers, but she had begun raising her hand more often during lessons, especially math, where numbers spoke a universal language she understood perfectly. Mrs. Collins frequently praised her work, even asking her to help other students who were struggling with fractions. You have a gift for explaining things, Layla, the teacher had said, causing a warm glow of pride to spread through her chest. Reading remained difficult, though. English words sometimes twisted themselves into knots on the page, refusing to behave logically like they did in Arabic. During reading groups, Layla stumbled over pronunciations, each mistake drawing snickers from Becky Peterson and her friends. Why can't you talk right? Becky had taunted during recess yesterday. Is it because you're a foreigner? The words still stung, but Layla had remembered her mother's words about heritage being a gift. I speak 2 languages, she'd replied, her voice shaking only slightly. How many do you speak? Becky had narrowed her eyes, but walked away without answering. It wasn't exactly a victory, But Layla had felt something shift inside her, a small seed of courage taking root. Today was Friday, which meant art class with Mr. Reynolds, one of the few parts of school Layla genuinely enjoyed. Unlike words or even numbers, art spoke in colors and shapes that needed no translation. Mr. Reynolds encouraged creativity and never made her feel strange for the patterns and motifs that naturally flowed from her fingertips. Geometric designs, inspired by the rugs in their apartment and the tiles she remembered from visits to her uncle's home in Detroit. "Class, today we're starting a special project," Mr. Reynolds announced after everyone had settled at their tables. His wild grey hair seemed particularly untamed today, matching his paint-splattered smock. "We're going to create family portraits, but with a twist. I want you to include elements that represent your family's culture and traditions." Layla's heart beat faster. She glanced around the room, noting how some students looked excited while others appeared confused. "What if we don't have a culture?" asked Tommy Miller, the boy who had made the camel comment. Mr. Reynolds smiled patiently. "Everyone has a culture, Tommy. It's in the foods you eat, the holidays you celebrate, the stories your grandparents tell. For some of you, your families have been in America for many generations. Others might have parents or grandparents who came from different countries. All of these backgrounds give us unique perspectives and traditions." As Mr. Reynolds distributed large sheets of paper and set out paints and markers, Layla's mind raced with possibilities. She could draw her mother in her hijab, cooking in their kitchen. She could include the prayer rug in the corner of their living room, the Arabic calligraphy hanging on their wall, the special sweets they made for Eid celebrations. "This project will take several weeks," Mr. Reynolds continued. "Today, I want you to sketch your ideas. Next week, we'll start adding color. When we're finished, we'll display all the portraits in the hallway for International Day next month." International Day. Layla hadn't known about this. The thought of her artwork, of her family's culture, being displayed for everyone to see, sent a mixture of pride and anxiety coursing through her. She bent over her paper, pencil moving hesitantly at first, then with increasing confidence, as the image in her mind took shape on the page. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't notice Jessica Freeman peering over her shoulder until the girl spoke. "What's that weird writing?" Layla tensed but didn't look up. "It's Arabic. It says family and love." "It looks like squiggles," Jessica said, but her tone held curiosity rather than mockery. "That's because it's read from right to left, not left to right like English," Layla explained, surprising herself with her steady voice. Jessica considered this. "Can you write my name in Arabic?" Now, Layla did look up, searching the other girl's face for signs of an upcoming joke or trap. Finding none, she nodded cautiously. "Sure, I can try." She took a fresh sheet of paper and carefully wrote Jessica's name in flowing Arabic script, explaining each letter as she went. A small crowd gathered around their table, other students, suddenly interested in seeing their own names transformed into these exotic symbols. By the time the bell rang, signaling the end of art class, Layla had written 6 different names and taught her classmates how to say hello and thank you in Arabic. As they filed out of the classroom, Tommy Miller actually smiled at her, a small gesture that nonetheless felt significant. "That was really cool," he said, gesturing to the paper where she'd written his name. "Can I keep this?" Layla nodded, a warmth spreading through her chest. "Sure." Walking home that afternoon, Layla recounted the art class experience to her mother, her words tumbling out in an excited mix of English and Arabic. "And then Jessica actually asked me to teach her a few words," she concluded. "She didn't say anything mean about my scarf or anything." Cade smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Sometimes people just need to see something familiar in what seems different." She paused at the corner grocery store that marked the halfway point of their journey home. Should we get some special treats to celebrate? Inside the small store, Mr. Abbasi greeted them warmly from behind the counter. An Egyptian who had moved to Chicago 30 years ago, he stocked items from across the Middle East and North Africa. Alongside typical American groceries, the rich scents of spices and fresh bread filled the narrow aisles. "Ah, my favorite customers," he called out. "Layla, I have those sesame cookies you like. Just came in yesterday." Layla grinned, heading toward the cookie display, while Cade picked up a few essentials: fresh mint, yogurt, a box of tea. The bell above the door jingled as another customer entered, and Layla turned to see Mrs. Collins, her teacher, looking slightly disoriented among the unfamiliar products. "Mrs. Collins!" Layla called out, surprising herself with her boldness. The teacher's face brightened with recognition. "Hello, Layla. I didn't expect to see you here." Cade approached, extending her hand. "I'm Cade Nasser, Layla's mother." "Jennifer Collins," the teacher replied, shaking Cade's hand warmly. "Your daughter is one of my brightest students, especially in mathematics." Pride bloomed across Cade's face. "Thank you. She works very hard." Mrs. Collins glanced around the store with interest. "I've driven past this place many times but never stopped in. My husband and I recently moved to the neighborhood, and I'm trying to explore local shops. Mr. Abbasi carries many treasures," Cade said. "Perhaps I can recommend something." What followed was an impromptu culinary tour, as Cade guided Mrs. Collins through the store, explaining various ingredients and suggesting simple recipes. Layla watched in fascination as her teacher took notes and filled her basket with items Cade recommended: sumac, pomegranate molasses, fresh flatbread. "You must try the date cookies," Cade insisted, selecting a small box from the bakery section. "They are my daughter's second favorite, after the sesame ones," Layla added with a smile. Mrs. Collins laughed. "I'll take both then. And perhaps—" She hesitated, then turned to Layla. "Would you mind writing down how to say delicious in Arabic? I'd like to surprise my husband when we try these." Warmth spread through Layla's chest as she carefully wrote ladith on the back of Mrs. Collins' receipt, then showed her how to pronounce ladith. Outside the store, as they said their goodbyes, Mrs. Collins mentioned the International Day preparation. I hope your family can attend, Mrs. Nasser. The students will be displaying their cultural projects, and there will be a potluck dinner where families share traditional dishes." "We would be honored," Cade replied. "Perhaps I could bring something." "For the potluck? That would be wonderful," Mrs. Collins beamed. "I'll send home more information with Layla next week." As they continued their walk home, now laden with grocery bags, including the sesame cookies Mr. Abbasi had insisted on giving Layla for being such a good helper, Cade seemed deep in thought. "What are you thinking about, Mama?" Layla asked. "I'm thinking," Cade said slowly, "that International Day might be a perfect opportunity." When Layla looked questioningly at her, she continued, "An opportunity to build bridges, to help others understand our heritage, and for us to learn about theirs as well." Layla considered this, remembering how interested her classmates had been in the Arabic writing. "Maybe I could teach them some more words, or show them how to write their names." "That's a wonderful idea," Cade agreed. "And perhaps we could bring your grandmother's special baklava for the potluck." For the first time in weeks, Layla felt a surge of excitement about school. "Can we call Teta tonight and ask for the recipe?" "Of course," Cade said, her eyes crinkling with happiness at her daughter's enthusiasm. "She will be so pleased." That evening, they spoke with Grandmother Nasser on the telephone, the connection crackling between Chicago and Detroit, where she lived with Layla's uncle. The older woman's joy was palpable even through the static as Layla explained the International Day project in her still improving Arabic. "Your heritage is your strength," Grandmother Nasser told her. "It has carried our family through war, through displacement, through new beginnings. Never forget that, my little star. Later, as Cade braided Layla's hair before bed, they discussed which dish would be best to share for the potluck. The baklava, of course, Layla said, and maybe your stuffed grape leaves. Tommy Miller might like those. He always has grape leaves in his lunch, but they're not like ours. Cade's hands stilled for a moment. Tommy Miller brings grape leaves for lunch? Layla nodded. His mom makes them, but they're different. He said they're Greek. A thoughtful expression crossed Cade's face. Perhaps Tommy's family also carries stories from another land, just as we do. She resumed braiding. You see, differences can also be connections, if we look closely enough. Layla pondered this as her mother finished the braid, tying it with a purple ribbon that matched her school scarf. Do you think the other kids will like our food? Some will, some may not, Cade answered honestly, but offering to share is always a gesture of friendship, whether or not it's accepted. She kissed the top of Layla's head. Now, sleep well. Tomorrow we have baking to do. As Layla drifted towards sleep, her mind filled with images of Arabic letters dancing across pages, of classmates trying her grandmother's baklava, of Mrs. Collins saying Lathith with her American accent. For the first time since school had started, the thought of Monday morning didn't fill her with dread. And somehow, somewhere in the space between wakefulness and dreams, a new understanding began to take shape. Perhaps her difference wasn't something to overcome or hide away. Perhaps it was something to share. Will the International Day Project help Layla find her place at school? Will her classmates come to appreciate her heritage, or will new challenges emerge? As the Nasser family prepares to share their traditions with the community, the path ahead remains uncertain but filled with newfound hope. The following weeks passed in a flurry of activity. In art class, Layla's family portrait took shape, her mother, in a vibrant blue hijab, standing beside Layla in their kitchen, surrounded by symbols of their heritage. Arabic calligraphy flowing. Along the borders, the skyline of Damascus, drawn from a photograph her grandmother had sent, forming a distant horizon beyond their Chicago window, a table laden with traditional dishes they prepared together. Mr. Reynolds had been particularly impressed with her use of perspective. You've created a wonderful juxtaposition of your two worlds, Layla, he'd said, teaching her the new word that described perfectly what she'd been trying to express. At home, Cade began experimenting with recipes for the International Day potluck. Adjusting spice levels, not everyone appreciates heat the way we do, she'd explained, and practicing dishes that could be prepared in advance and transported easily to the school. Their small apartment often filled with the aromas of cardamom, cinnamon and rosewater, as Layla helped her mother roll delicate cookies and layer phyllo dough for baklava. The transformation in Layla continued, subtle but steady. She raised her hand more often in class, volunteered to read aloud despite her occasional pronunciation struggles, and even invited Jessica Freeman to sit with her at lunch one day. The girls had discovered a shared love of drawing and spent their lunch period sketching imaginary creatures in Jessica's notebook. Not everything had changed, of course. Becky Peterson and her friends still whispered sometimes when Layla walked past, and a fifth-grade boy had pulled at her scarf in the hallway before running away laughing. Each incident stung, but the pain dulled more quickly now, cushioned by the growing confidence Layla found in embracing rather than hiding her identity. On Wednesday afternoon, a week before International Day, Cade arrived at the school to find Layla engaged in an intense conversation with Tommy Miller near the flagpole. Her first instinct was concern. Had there been another insult, another painful interaction? But as she drew closer, she realized both children were smiling. "Mama!" Layla called when she spotted Cade. "Tommy's Yaya makes dolmades, which are like our grape leaves, but with different spices. And they eat them cold, not hot like we do." Tommy nodded enthusiastically. My grandmother is coming for International Day and bringing some. She's from Athens and speaks Greek at home, just like Layla speaks Arabic with you, Mrs. Nasser. The revelation that Tommy, who had once mocked Layla for her differences, also carried another culture beneath his American exterior shouldn't have been surprising. Yet somehow it was. Cade had assumed, as people so often did about each other, that his family had been in America for generations, that he represented the norm against which Layla was measured and found foreign. I would very much like to meet your Yaya, Cade told him warmly. Perhaps she and I can exchange recipes. Tommy beamed. She'd like that. She's always trying to get people to try her cooking. He turned to Layla. See you tomorrow. Don't forget to bring your Arabic alphabet sheet so we can practice. As he dashed off to where his mother waited in an idling station wagon, Cade raised an eyebrow at her daughter. Arabic alphabet sheet? Layla ducked her head, suddenly shy. Some kids ask me to teach them a few words. Mrs. Collins thought it would be a good preparation for International Day, so she gave me permission to make a little presentation during language arts tomorrow. Pride swelled in Cade's chest, nearly stealing her breath. That's wonderful, Habibti. What will you teach them? Just basic greetings, and maybe how to count to 10, Layla explained as they began their walk home. And how to write their names, since they really liked that. Cade squeezed her daughter's hand. You have become a bridge builder, just as we discussed. Your grandmother will be so proud when I tell her. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Layla seemed unusually quiet, her brow furrowed in concentration as she chopped vegetables for the salad. What's troubling you? Cade finally asked. Are you nervous about your presentation? Layla set down the knife, turning to face her mother with serious eyes. What if I don't do it right? What if I make mistakes and they think Arabic is silly, or that our culture isn't as good as theirs? Cade wiped her hands on a towel and pulled out a chair at their small kitchen table, gesturing for Layla to sit opposite her. First, remember that Arabic has been carrying wisdom and poetry for centuries. A child's stumble cannot diminish such a language. She reached across to tuck a loose strand of hair behind Layla's ear. Second, sharing culture isn't about proving which is better. It's about expanding our understanding of humanity. But what if they still make fun of me? Layla persisted. Some might, Cade acknowledged honestly. Fear of difference runs deep in many hearts, but others will see the beauty you're offering them. She smiled encouragingly. And remember, Tommy, sometimes those who first mock may simply need time to recognize themselves in you. Layla considered this, then nodded slowly. I'll practice extra tonight. And I'll help you, Cade promised. After dinner, we'll make the best alphabet sheet Monroe Elementary has ever seen. The next morning, Layla left for school, clutching a carefully prepared folder containing colorful Arabic alphabet cards and simple practice sheets Cade had helped her create. Her usual nervousness was tinged with excitement as she contemplated sharing this piece of herself with her classmates. Cade watched her walk through the school doors, purple scarf held high, and offered a silent prayer of gratitude for her daughter's blossoming courage. Then she hurried to catch the bus that would take her to the hospital cafeteria, where she would spend the day preparing meals for strangers while her daughter prepared to feed curious minds. That afternoon, when Cade arrived for pickup, she found Layla surrounded by a small group of classmates, all attempting to pronounce Ma Salama, goodbye, amid fits of giggles. You twist your tongue too much, Sean, Jessica was saying. Listen to Layla again. Layla demonstrated once more, exaggerating the sounds slightly. Ma Salama. Me Salema, the children repeated in ragged unison, then burst into laughter at their mixed results. Not bad for beginners, Layla told them with a grin, catching sight of her mother and waving goodbye to her friends. As they walked home, Layla recounted the language arts class in detail. How nervous she'd been at first, how Mrs. Collins had introduced her presentation as a special cultural exchange, how most of the class had been fascinated by the concept of writing. From right to left, even Becky tried to write her name, Layla said, wonder in her voice. She didn't get it right, but she tried. And how did it make you feel, sharing your language? Cade asked. Layla thought for a moment. Proud, she finally said, like I had something special to give them, something nobody else in the class could teach. Cade nodded, understanding perfectly. That's the power of heritage, Habibti. It gives as much as it asks of us. When they reached Mr. Abbasi's store, he waved them in excitedly. Layla, Mrs. Nasser, I have something to show you. He led them to a small display near the register where he had arranged imported candy, dried fruits, and small packages of traditional cookies with a hand-lettered sign, International Day Treats, Monroe Elementary. Your teacher, Mrs. Collins, she came back yesterday, he explained. We talked about the school event. I'm preparing special sample packages for children to try. He beamed at Layla. She tells me you will be teaching Arabic words. Perhaps I can provide some treats to help the learning. Layla's eyes widened. That would be amazing, Mr. Abbasi. It's very generous of you, Cade added. The children will love it. This community has been my home for 30 years, Mr. Abbasi said, his expression growing serious. When I first arrived, many looked at me as though I came from another planet, not just another country. Now, he gestured around his shop, which served customers of all backgrounds. Now, we are neighbors. This is how change happens. One conversation, one shared meal, one child teaching another to write their name in a new language. As they left the store with their groceries and a sample of the treats Mr. Abbasi planned to donate, Layla seemed deep in thought. What's on your mind? Cade asked. Mr. Abbasi said it took 30 years for things to change, Layla replied. That's such a long time. Cade considered how to respond, balancing honesty with hope. Change can be slow, she acknowledged. But it doesn't always take 30 years. Sometimes it happens in moments, like when Tommy realized his Greek grandmother and your Arabic-speaking mother might have something in common. She squeezed Layla's hand. And sometimes change begins with one brave fourth grader willing to stand up and teach her classmates something new. That night, Layla practiced her presentation 3 more times before bed, her confidence growing. With each repetition, as Cade tucked her in, Layla asked a question that caught her by surprise. Mama, are you ever scared about being different? Cade sat on the edge of the bed, taking her time to formulate an honest answer. Yes, she finally said. There are times when I feel alone, when eyes follow me with suspicion, when strangers tell me to go back where I came from, even though your grandparents made their home here decades ago. She smoothed Layla's blanket. But fear is only one, visitor among many. Pride visits too, and joy, and the deep peace that comes from living truthfully. Layla nodded, absorbing her mother's words. I think I understand. It's like having different weather inside you. Cade smiled at the apt metaphor. Exactly like that, and just as we dress for rain or shine outside, we learn to navigate the changing weather within. She kissed Layla's forehead. Now sleep, my brave teacher. Tomorrow brings new adventures. In the days leading up to International Day, excitement rippled through Monroe Elementary. The hallways bloomed with student artwork depicting family traditions from around the world. Handmade flags and cultural symbols hung from the ceilings. Teachers incorporated global themes into their lessons, and the cafeteria served sample dishes from different countries each day. Layla's family portrait earned a prominent spot in the main corridor, alongside Tommy's painting of his Greek grandmother teaching him to dance. Jessica's depiction of her family's Irish Christmas traditions, and dozens of other windows into the diverse heritages that made up their school community. The night before the big event, Cade and Layla worked side by side in their kitchen, preparing trays of baklava and stuffed grape leaves. The familiar rituals of cooking, measuring, mixing, tasting, calmed Layla's nerves about the following a day. "Remember when you asked for a different name?" Cade asked gently as they drizzled honey over the final tray of baklava. Layla looked up, slightly embarrassed. "That seems like such a long time ago." "It was only a few weeks." Cade smiled. "Look how much has changed since then." Layla considered this. "I don't want a different name anymore. I like being Layla, and I like you being Layla too," Cade replied, carefully covering the desserts with plastic wrap. "Get some rest now. Tomorrow will be a full day." International Day dawned clear and crisp, the November sun casting long shadows across the city. Cade took the day off from the hospital cafeteria, a rare luxury made possible by trading shifts, with a co-worker. Together, she and Layla carried their food contributions to school, where the gymnasium had been transformed into a global marketplace with tables representing different cultures arranged around the perimeter. Mrs. Collins greeted them at the entrance, clipboard in hand. "Layla, Mrs. Nasser, the Middle Eastern table is just over there, next to the Greek station. Tommy's grandmother is already setting up." As they arranged their dishes on the designated table, an elderly woman with silver-streaked black hair approached from the neighboring station. Her hands were weathered but elegant, her posture straight despite her years. "You must be Layla and her mother," she said, her accent thick but warm. "I am Eleni Miller, Tommy's Yaya. He talks about you both so much lately." "It's a pleasure to meet you," Cade replied, extending her hand. "I'm Cade Nasser." "Ah, the famous grape leaves," Eleni exclaimed, spotting their platter. "Tommy says yours are different from mine. We must compare recipes." What began as a polite exchange quickly blossomed into an animated discussion of cooking, techniques, ingredient variations, and family traditions. Despite their different backgrounds, the women discovered numerous parallels in their culinary heritage and experiences as immigrants preserving their culture in a new land. Layla watched in fascination as her mother and Tommy's grandmother fell into conversation as easily as old friends, occasionally breaking into laughter over shared kitchen disasters or stubborn family members who insisted there was only one right way to prepare traditional dishes. Meanwhile, students and their families began filling the gymnasium. Mr. Reynolds directed visitors to the art display in the hallway, where Layla's family portrait drew admiring comments. Mrs. Collins organized small cultural presentations throughout the afternoon, including a demonstration of Irish step dancing by Jessica's older sister and a short Greek folk dance performed by Tommy and his cousins. When it was Layla's turn to present, she stood before the gathered crowd, her purple scarf neatly arranged, her voice initially soft but growing stronger with each word as she taught simple Arabic greetings and showed how names could be written in flowing script. Parents and children alike tried to mimic the unfamiliar sounds, creating a cheerful cacophony that filled the gymnasium with laughter. Mr. Abbasi arrived during Layla's presentation, carrying boxes of sample treats from his store. He stood at the back, beaming with pride as the young girl he'd watched grow since infancy confidently shared her heritage with her school community. As the afternoon progressed, Layla found herself drawn into games and activities with classmates who now sought her out rather than avoided her. Even Becky Peterson approached the Middle Eastern table, tentatively trying a piece of baklava under Cade's encouraging smile. "This is really good," Becky admitted, looking surprised. "It's sweet but different from regular desserts." "The secret is the rose water," Cade explained, offering her another piece. "It's a flavor that might seem strange at first, but becomes quite addictive." Becky hesitated, then took the second piece, mumbling a quiet "thank you" before drifting back to her friends. Later, as Layla helped Tommy's grandmother demonstrate how to roll grape leaves, she spotted her mother deep in conversation with Mrs. Collins and the school principal, Mr. Davidson. They appeared to be discussing something important, with the principal nodding thoughtfully as Cade spoke with animated gestures. When Layla finished her demonstration, she made her way through the crowd toward her mother. "What were you talking about with Mr. Davidson?" she asked curiously. Cade's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I was suggesting that perhaps International Day could become International Club, a regular after-school program where students could learn about different cultures throughout the year, not just for one day." "Would you help run it?" Layla asked. "If my work schedule permits," Cade replied. "Mr. Davidson seems very interested in the idea. He's going to discuss it with the school board next week." As the event wound down, families gathered in the cafeteria for a communal meal featuring dishes from the various cultural tables. Layla sat between Tommy and Jessica, trading bites of food and stories about family traditions, while across the room, Cade found herself surrounded by other mothers, eager to exchange recipes and parenting wisdom. The principal tapped his glass for attention as the meal concluded. "I want to thank everyone who helped make our first expanded International Day such a success," he announced. "Monroe Elementary has always prided itself on being a community school, but today has shown me that our community is richer and more diverse than perhaps we've fully appreciated." He smiled warmly. "I'm pleased to announce that beginning in January, we'll be establishing an international club as an after-school program where students and parents can continue sharing their cultural heritage throughout the year." Applause filled the room, and Layla turned to her mother with shining eyes. Cade gave her a small wink, her heart full to bursting with pride. As they walked home in the gathering dusk, their empty containers lightweight in their arms, Layla skipped alongside her mother, energized despite the long day. "Do you think things will be different now?" she asked. "At school, I mean." Cade considered the question carefully. "Some things will change, others may not. One day cannot erase all misunderstandings or prejudices." She looked down at her daughter. "But bridges have been built today, connections that weren't there before. That's how change begins." Layla nodded, processing this realistic but hopeful assessment. "I like teaching everyone Arabic, and Tommy's going to teach me some Greek words next week." She paused, then added thoughtfully, "Maybe being different isn't just about standing out. Maybe it's also about having something special to share." "That's very wise, Habibti," Cade replied, her heart swelling with the simple profundity of her daughter's realization. Neither of them could have predicted how International Day would ripple outward, creating unexpected connections in the weeks and months to come. The Monday after International Day, Mrs. Collins introduced a new unit on world alphabets, inspired by Layla's presentation. Students learned about the origins of writing systems from cuneiform to Latin letters, with Layla serving as a special helper during the Arabic portion of the unit. Mr. Abbasi's store saw an increase in customers as families who had sampled his treats at International Day sought out ingredients to recreate flavors they'd enjoyed. He hired Cade to work part-time on weekends, preparing fresh pastries and offering cooking demonstrations to curious newcomers. The proposed International Club became reality in January, meeting every Thursday afternoon in the school library. Cade coordinated with other parents to create monthly themes exploring different cultures through food, art, music, and language. Even with her busy schedule, she made time to attend whenever possible, watching with joy as Layla blossomed in this new environment where her heritage was valued rather than questioned. Not everything changed overnight, of course. There were still difficult days, like when an elderly man at the bus stop told Cade to speak American when she was talking to Layla in Arabic, or when a substitute teacher mispronounced Layla's name all day despite repeated corrections, but something fundamental had shifted, both within the school community and within Layla herself. She walked taller now, her purple scarf arranged with deliberate pride rather than nervous self-consciousness. When challenges arose, she faced them with the growing confidence of someone who knew her difference contained strength as well as vulnerability. One snowy afternoon in February, as Layla and Tommy worked on a joint presentation about Mediterranean food traditions for International Club, Tommy asked a question that caught her by surprise. "Do you ever wish you weren't different?" he said, looking up from the map they were labeling, "like that your family came from here instead of somewhere else?" Layla considered the question, remembering how desperately she had once wanted to blend in, to be invisible rather than conspicuous in her difference. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but then I wouldn't know Arabic or how to make baklava or the stories my grandmother tells about Damascus." She shrugged. "I wouldn't be me." Tommy nodded thoughtfully. "My mom doesn't speak Greek. She says being American means leaving the old country behind." His expression grew troubled. "But Yaya says that forgetting where you come from is like cutting off your own roots." "My mother says our heritage gives us special sight," Layla offered. "We can see things from more than one perspective." "Like 3D glasses," Tommy suggested with a grin. Layla laughed. "Kind of, yeah." Their conversation was interrupted by Mrs. Collins, announcing it was time to share presentations, but the exchange stayed with Layla long after International Club ended. On the walk home with her mother, snow crunching beneath their boots and twilight settling over the city, she recounted the discussion. "Tommy's mother and grandmother disagree about heritage," she explained. "Which one do you think is right?" Cade was quiet for several steps, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "I think there's truth in both perspectives," she finally said. "America has always been shaped by people bringing pieces of their homelands with them, while also creating something new together. The question isn't whether to remember or forget, but how to carry your heritage in a way that enriches rather than isolates you." Layla processed this, watching the streetlights flicker on along their route. "I'm glad we keep our traditions," she decided, "and I'm glad we share them too." "As am I," Cade replied, squeezing her daughter's gloved hand. At that moment, Mr. Abbasi emerged from his store, locking the door behind him. He waved when he spotted them approaching. "Ah, my favorite customers. How was school today, Layla?" "Good. We're preparing for Mediterranean Day in International Club. Tommy and I are presenting together about food traditions." Mr. Abbasi's eyes twinkled. "Excellent. You must tell your classmates that authentic ingredients can be found right here." He patted his store door affectionately. 30 years in this neighborhood, and now I have young ambassadors promoting cultural exchange." He chuckled. "Your mother used to come in as a little girl, you know. Now you." This is how community grows. Generation to generation, tradition to tradition. As they continued their walk home, after bidding Mr. Abbasi good night, Layla thought about the connections that had formed over the past few months, between classmates of different backgrounds, between her mother and Tommy's grandmother, between their family and the broader community. Threads woven together, creating a fabric stronger and more beautiful than any single strand alone. "Mama," she said suddenly, "do you think when I grow up, I could be a teacher? Like, teach people about different cultures and languages?" Cade looked down at her daughter, seeing not just the child she was, but the woman she might become, a bridge builder, a keeper of heritage, a weaver of community. "I think you would be a wonderful teacher, Habibti." "You already are." That night, as Cade tucked Layla into bed, the girl asked for a story, not the fairy tales of her younger years, but one of the real stories about their family history that had become their special ritual. Tell me about the day you came to America, she requested, snuggling under her quilt. Cade settled beside her, smoothing the blanket. I was 7 years old, just a little younger than you are now. Your grandparents had decided to leave Syria because of increasing unrest. Your grandfather had a cousin in Detroit who sponsored our family. As the familiar story unfolded, the long journey, the strange new sights and sounds, the challenges and triumphs of building a life in an unfamiliar land, Layla listened with fresh understanding. These weren't just stories anymore. They were the foundations of her identity, connecting her to generations past and those yet to come. And now, here we are, Cade concluded, as she always did, creating our own chapter in the family story. And someday I'll tell my children, Layla murmured sleepily, about their brave grandmother who came to a new country and kept our traditions alive, about how she taught me to be proud, even when it was hard. Cade felt tears prick her eyes as she bent to kiss her daughter's forehead. Sleep well, my little teacher. As she turned out the light and slipped from the room, Cade paused in the doorway, watching her daughter's peaceful breathing. The journey was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments when Layla's difference would feel like a burden rather than a gift. But the foundation had been laid, roots deep enough to hold through whatever storms might come. In the far quiet of their apartment, with the city lights twinkling beyond the window like earthbound stars, Cade offered a silent prayer of gratitude for this country that, despite its imperfections, had become home, for the community that was slowly learning to see the beauty in difference, for her daughter, whose courage continued to humble and inspire her. And when Layla looked in the mirror, the next morning, adjusting her purple scarf with careful hands, there was no hesitation in her movements, no shadow of shame in her eyes. I like my name, she said, her chin lifting with quiet dignity. I like who I am. Have you or someone you know ever experienced the struggle of balancing different cultural identities? Let me know in the comments. Spring arrived in Chicago, melting the last patches of stubborn snow and coaxing green buds from the trees in Washington Park. International Club had become one of the most popular after-school activities at Monroe Elementary, with a waiting list of students eager to join. Under Mrs. Collins's guidance and with parent volunteers like Cade, the club had explored traditions from 12 different cultures, learning phrases in various languages, trying foods from around the world, and discovering the common threads that connected seemingly disparate heritage practices. For Layla, the transformation had been profound. The shy, uncertain girl who had once begged to change her name was now one of the most active participants in school activities. Her friendship with Tommy and Jessica had deepened, expanding to include other classmates who had discovered shared interests beyond cultural backgrounds. Even Becky Peterson, who had once been her chief tormentor, now sat with Layla occasionally. At lunch, drawn by the Saudi Arabian folk tales Layla shared from her grandmother's repertoire. One warm April afternoon, as Layla and Cade walked home from school, they passed a newsstand displaying headlines about international tensions and political conflicts. "Mama," Layla said, her expression troubled as she pointed to an article about the Middle East. "Why do people fight so much about differences? At school, we've learned that different cultures can get along and even learn from each other." Cade considered how to address such a complex question. "The world of nations is much more complicated than a classroom," she began carefully. "There are histories of hurt, conflicts over resources, and powerful people who sometimes benefit from division rather than unity." She guided Layla around a puddle on the sidewalk. "But what you're learning in International Club, that's where hope lives. When people connect as individuals, share meals, learn each other's songs and stories, it becomes harder to see one another as enemies." Layla nodded thoughtfully. "So maybe our club is important, even if it's small." Especially because it's small, Cade replied. Real change happens person by person, friendship by friendship, like ripples in water spreading outward. As they approached Mr. Abbasi's store, they noticed a crowd gathered outside. Drawing closer, they saw streamers decorating the entrance and a banner announcing 30th anniversary celebration. Mr. Abbasi spotted them and waved enthusiastically. My friends, you are just in time for the party. 30 years since I opened these doors. The sidewalk in front of the store had been transformed into a makeshift celebration space. Tables laden with food samples lined one wall, while neighborhood residents of various backgrounds mingled, sampling dishes and chatting amicably. Tommy and his grandmother were there, along with Mrs. Collins and several other familiar faces from Monroe Elementary. We wouldn't miss it, Cade said warmly, accepting the cup of mint tea Mr. Abbasi pressed into her hands. Your store has been the heart of this community for so many of us. Mr. Abbasi beamed, the deep lines around his eyes crinkling with pleasure. When I came to Chicago, I didn't know if I would find a place where I belonged. Now look, he gestured to the diverse crowd enjoying his hospitality. All these people, all these stories coming together. This is the America I dreamed of finding. The celebration continued into early evening, with impromptu music performances and shared stories of how Mr. Abbasi's store had served as a gathering place and cultural touchstone for the neighborhood through 3 decades of change. When it was Cade's turn to speak, she shared how the store had been her first job when she was a teenager, how Mr. Abbasi had helped her family find their footing in a new city. And now my daughter finds the same welcome here, she concluded, her arm around Layla's shoulders. This store isn't just a business, it's a bridge between worlds. Later, as the party wound down and they helped clean up, Mrs. Collins approached Layla with an unexpected question. The 5th grade graduation ceremony is coming up in June, she explained. Mr. Davidson and I were wondering if you might be willing to say a few words about what International Club has meant to you this year, as one of our most enthusiastic members. Layla's eyes widened. You want me to speak? In front of everyone? Just for a minute or two, Mrs. Collins assured her. Many parents have commented on how the club has positively affected their children's understanding of different cultures. We thought your perspective would be valuable. Walking home in the gathering dusk, Layla was uncharacteristically quiet, processing the unexpected invitation. Are you nervous about speaking at graduation? Cade finally asked. A little, Layla admitted, but also she hesitated, searching for the right words. It feels important, like I could help other kids who feel different. Cade nodded, understanding perfectly. You know, when I was your age, I never could have imagined standing in front of a room full of people, sharing my thoughts. I was too busy trying to be invisible. She smiled down at her daughter. You're braver than I was. I learned it from you, Layla replied simply. The weeks leading up to graduation passed in a blur of activity. Layla worked diligently on her brief speech, writing and rewriting until the words felt right. Cade helped her practice in their living room, offering gentle suggestions and unwavering support. On the morning of the ceremony, as Layla stood before the mirror, adjusting her special new headscarf, a deep blue embroidered with silver threads, a gift from her grandmother for the occasion, she caught her mother watching from the doorway. You look beautiful, Cade said softly. So grown up. I'm nervous, Layla confessed. That's natural, Cade assured her. But remember, your voice matters. Your story matters. The elementary school auditorium buzzed with excitement as families filed in, finding seats among the folding chairs arranged in neat rows. On stage, the 5th graders fidgeted in their best clothes, whispering among themselves as they waited for the ceremony to begin. Layla sat between Tommy and Jessica, drawing comfort from their familiar presence. Mr. Davidson welcomed everyone with a brief speech about the milestone of completing elementary school, followed by Mrs. Collins presenting academic awards. Then came the moment Layla had been both anticipating and dreading. This year, our school community embarked on a journey of cultural exploration through our new international club, Mr. Davidson announced. To share what this experience has meant to our students, I'd like to invite Layla Nasser to say a few words. On shaky legs, Layla approached the podium, adjusting the microphone to her height. The audience blurred before her, a sea of faces, including her mother in the third row, nodding encouragement. She took a deep breath and began. At the beginning of this school year, I asked my mother if I could change my name. I wanted to be called something more American, something that wouldn't make me stand out. Her voice grew steadier as she continued. I was tired of being different, of having food that didn't look like everyone else's lunch, of speaking a language at home that none of my classmates understood. She paused, scanning the attentive faces. But then something changed. Through International Club, I discovered that almost everyone has a story of difference, whether their grandparents came from Greece or Ireland or China or Mexico. We all carry heritage with us, even when it's not visible on the outside. Layla smiled, finding her rhythm now. My mother says our differences give us special sight, like wearing glasses that let us see the world from multiple perspectives. In International Club, we've learned words in 12 languages, tasted foods from around the world, and discovered that traditions that seem foreign can become familiar when shared with friends. Her gaze found Cade, whose eyes shimmered with tears of pride. I don't want to change my name anymore. I'm proud to be Layla. I'm proud of my heritage. And I'm grateful to be part of a school community where differences are not just tolerated, but celebrated as the gifts they truly are. As she returned to her seat amid warm applause, Layla caught sight of Becky Peterson in the audience, clapping with what appeared to be genuine appreciation. Next to Becky sat her mother, who had once commented on Cade's hijab being a sign of oppression, but had since become one of the most enthusiastic parent volunteers for International Club, discovering along with her daughter that understanding often begins with simple curiosity. Following the ceremony, families gathered in the school gymnasium for refreshments. Cade found herself surrounded by parents expressing gratitude for her involvement in International Club and asking if the program would continue next year. Mrs. Nasser, Mr. Davidson said, approaching with a plate of cookies, I've been meaning to ask if you might consider taking a more formal role with International Club next year, perhaps as co-coordinator with Mrs. Collins. The school board has approved funding for a stipend position. I'd be honored, Cade replied, surprised and pleased by the invitation, though I'd need to work around my hospital schedule. We'll make it work, he assured her. Your perspective has been invaluable this year. Across the room, Layla stood with a group of classmates, including Tommy, Jessica, and, surprisingly, Becky Peterson. They were discussing their upcoming transition to middle school, sharing excitement and apprehension about this next chapter in their education. Will International Club continue in middle school? Becky asked, directing the question to Layla. I'm not sure, Layla replied, but if not, maybe we could start one. That would be cool, Tommy agreed. My Yaya says she'd volunteer to teach Greek cooking again. My dad could show how to play Irish drums, Jessica offered, and Becky hesitated, then continued with uncharacteristic shyness. I could ask my grandpa to come in. He's from Germany and has all these old stories about growing up there after the war. Watching from across the room, Cade marveled at the transformation. Not just in Layla, who stood confidently among her peers, but in the entire social ecosystem that had once made her daughter feel so isolated in her difference. Later that evening, As they walked home through the soft spring twilight, Layla's graduation certificate carefully rolled in her hand. She turned to her mother with a thoughtful expression. "Mama, remember when you told me that being different gives us special sight?" Cade nodded. "I remember. I think I understand better now," Layla said. "It's not just that we can see things from different perspectives, it's that we can help others see differently too." She gestured vaguely with her hands, trying to articulate the concept, like building bridges in people's minds. Cade felt a surge of pride, so intense it nearly took her breath away. "That's exactly right, Habibti. And you've become quite the bridge builder this year." As they approached their apartment building, the setting sun painted the brick facade with warm golden light. Inside, a special celebration dinner awaited. Cade had prepared all of Layla's favorite dishes, and a small gift wrapped in silver paper sat on the kitchen table. After dinner, Layla carefully unwrapped the package to find a journal bound in soft leather, its pages blank and waiting. "For your stories," Cade explained. "The ones you've lived and the ones yet to come." Layla ran her fingers over the smooth cover. "I'll write about International Club," she decided, "and about Mr. Abbasi's anniversary, and about how Tommy's Yaya taught us to dance." Her expression grew serious. "And about the day I asked to change my name, and how you helped me find my pride instead." Cade reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "Those are important stories to remember." That night, after Layla had gone to bed, Cade sat alone by the window, gazing out at the city lights. She thought about her own journey, the scared 7-year-old arriving in a strange new country, the teenager struggling to balance two worlds, the young mother determined to give her daughter roots deep enough to hold through any storm. The path hadn't always been easy. There had been tears and doubts, moments of loneliness so acute they physically hurt. There would be more challenges ahead, she knew. Middle school brought new social complexities. Adolescence would test Layla's sense of identity in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The wider world beyond their community would not always be as accepting as the International Club had become. But watching Layla stand at that podium today, speaking her truth with such clarity and confidence, Cade had glimpsed the woman her daughter was becoming: strong, compassionate, capable of building bridges across difference. Whatever challenges lay ahead, that vision gave her hope. Years later, that same girl gave a speech at her high school graduation about heritage and belonging. She wore her scarf with pride. She spoke in both English and Arabic, honoring all parts of her identity. Cade sat in the crowd, heart swollen, with pride, remembering the small girl who had once begged for a different name. The journey had not always been smooth. There had been setbacks and struggles, moments when Layla questioned her place in the world. But the foundation laid in. That pivotal fourth-grade year had proven strong enough to weather the storms of adolescence. After the ceremony, as families gathered on the school lawn for photographs and congratulations, Layla made her way through the crowd to where her mother waited. At 17, she had her grandmother's eyes and her mother's determined chin. The purple scarf of her childhood had given way to a sophisticated teal one that complemented her graduation robe. "You were magnificent," Cade said, embracing her daughter. "Your words touched many hearts today." "I had a good teacher," Layla replied, her eyes shining. "The best." Over Layla's shoulder, Cade saw familiar faces approaching. Tommy and his grandmother, now stooped with age but still regal. Jessica and her parents, Becky Peterson, who had become one of Layla's closest friends despite their rocky beginning. Mr. Abbasi, leaning on a cane but beaming with pride. Their community had expanded over the years, encompassing new friends and mentors, but these first bridge builders held a special place. They had been there at the beginning, when a young girl discovered that difference could be strength rather than shame, As the group exchanged congratulations and reminisced about elementary school days, Cade stood slightly apart, observing the confident young woman her daughter had become, bilingual and bicultural, rooted in heritage yet fully engaged with the present, able to move between worlds with grace. Because, in a world trying to erase them, her daughter stood like a flag, visible, proud, unashamed, and Cade knew. She hadn't just raised a child, she had raised memory, pride, resistance, a bridge builder who would continue connecting worlds, long after she was gone. That night, as they shared a quiet moment at home, before Layla left for the all-night graduation party, her daughter asked a question that caught Cade by surprise. "Was it hard, Mama? Raising me to be proud when the world sometimes wanted me to be ashamed?" Cade considered the question carefully. "There were difficult moments," she acknowledged. "Times when I questioned whether I was making your life harder by insisting on keeping our traditions alive." She smiled softly. "But watching you grow into who you are, strong, compassionate, unafraid of your own voice, I have never doubted that it was worth every struggle." Layla nodded, her eyes bright with emotion. "Thank you," she said simply, "for giving me roots and wings." As Layla gathered her things and prepared to leave, Cade wondered what her own mother would think of this moment, this granddaughter heading to college in the fall, planning to study international relations and linguistics, determined to build more bridges between cultures. She thought her mother would be proud, just as she was, proud of the heritage preserved across oceans and generations, proud of the new branches growing from ancient roots, proud of the young woman who moved through the world not despite her difference, but because of it, carrying the strength of those who came before while creating her own path forward. And when Layla glanced in the mirror one last time before departing, adjusting her scarf with practiced hands, her reflection showed not just herself, but all the women who had shaped her, grandmother, mother, daughter, linked in an unbroken chain of memory and hope. "I like who I am," she said, her voice clear and confident, "all of who I am." Cade watched her daughter leave for the celebration, heart full to overflowing. The journey that had begun with a tearful request for a different name had led to this moment of wholeness and self-acceptance. There would be more challenges ahead, more growth and change, but the foundation was unshakable now. In a world that too often demanded conformity, Layla had learned to stand in her truth, and in doing so, she had not only found her own voice, but helped others find theirs as well. This, Cade thought, was the true power of heritage, not just preserving the past, but using its wisdom to create a more inclusive future. One bridge, one story, one proud young woman at a time. Congratulations, type 9 in the comments, so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.